You know what's wild? How a man can stand in front of 300 people, accept an award for being a pillar of the community, and in the same breath destroy the woman who built him from the ground up. My husband did exactly that. Stood on that stage in his $1,000 suit that I helped pay for, thanked his mistress by name, and asked me for a divorce in front of everyone we knew. He thought I'd just sit there, cry quietly, and let him walk all over me. But what he didn't know was that I had receipts, and when I took that microphone, I made sure everyone in that room knew exactly who they'd been applauding. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or cast aside like you were nothing, stick around for this one. And if this story hits home, hit that like button and subscribe, because karma served cold is a dish best shared. Trust me, you're gonna want to hear how this ends. My name is Brielle, and 12 years ago I married a man named Damon, thinking I'd found my forever. He was charming, ambitious, had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. We met at a community event where he was volunteering, talking about changing the world and uplifting the community. I was a physical therapist, doing well for myself, and I fell hard for his vision. We got married, had 2 beautiful babies, Trevor and Aaliyah, and from the outside, we looked like the perfect black family. Church on Sundays, backyard barbecues, Christmas cards with matching outfits. The whole thing. But what people didn't see was that I was the one holding everything together. When Damon decided he wanted to get his master's degree in nonprofit management, I worked 2 jobs to pay for it. When he wanted to start his own organization focused on youth development, I drained my savings to help him get it off the ground. I was the one getting up at 5 in the morning with the kids, taking them to school, going to work, coming home to cook dinner, helping with homework, and still making sure my husband felt supported in his dreams. And I didn't complain, because I believed in him. I believed in us. About 6 months before everything fell apart, I started noticing changes. Little things at first. Damon was on his phone more, tilting the screen away when I walked by. He started coming home later, always with some excuse about donor meetings or program planning. He bought new cologne, started going to the gym religiously, got a fresh haircut every week. I tried to tell myself it was just him taking better care of himself, maybe going through some midlife thing. But in my gut, I knew. You always know. I didn't say anything, though. I was scared of what I might find if I started digging, so I just kept pushing through, kept being the good wife, kept showing up. Then came the annual gala for his nonprofit. This was the biggest event of the year, where all the donors, board members, and community leaders came together. Damon had been nominated for Community Leader of the Year, and he was so excited. I bought a new dress, got my hair done, told myself that maybe this night would remind us of why we fell in love. Maybe I'd been overthinking everything. The venue was beautiful, all elegant and decorated, and I felt good walking in. But the moment we got there, something felt off. Damon barely looked at me. He was distracted, scanning the room, and when I tried to hold his hand, he pulled away and said he needed to go network. Then I saw her, Chantel. She was the new program coordinator at his nonprofit, 28 years old, beautiful, standing there in a dress that probably cost more than mine. And the way she looked at me when our eyes met? It wasn't friendly. It was territorial. Damon told me I'd be sitting at a different table from him, said it was for networking purposes, that the executive team needed to sit together. I felt a knot form in my stomach, but I didn't make a scene. I just nodded, went to my assigned table with a bunch of people I barely knew, and tried to smile through the whole thing. My best friend Kenya was there, and she kept giving me these concerned looks, asking if I was okay. I told her I was fine, but I wasn't. Something was very, very wrong. Then came the awards ceremony. They called Damon's name for Community Leader of the Year, and the room erupted in applause. I clapped too, genuinely proud despite everything, because I knew how hard he'd worked. I watched him walk up to that stage, shake hands with the board president, and take the microphone. His speech started out normal. He thanked the board, thanked the donors, talked about the kids in the community they'd helped. I was waiting for him to thank me. 12 years of marriage, and I was waiting for my name. Instead, he said, "But I can't accept this award without being completely honest with everyone here tonight." My heart dropped into my stomach. The room got quiet. And then he said it. "I've been living a lie. There's someone who's truly been my rock this past year, someone who's shown me what real partnership looks like." He paused, and I swear I couldn't breathe. "Chantel, could you come up here?" I watched this woman walk onto that stage like she'd won something. She was crying, looking at my husband like he was everything. And Damon, this man I'd built my life around, put his arm around her and said, "This woman has given me the courage to be honest, to live in my truth." Then he looked directly at me, sitting there in front of 300 people, and said, "Brielle, I want a divorce. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I can't keep pretending anymore." The room exploded. Gasps, whispers, people pulling out their phones. Some folks looked at me with pity, others with shock. A few looked away like they couldn't bear to watch, and I just sat there, frozen. This was really happening. My husband was leaving me for another woman in front of everyone, at his moment of triumph, on a stage, with cameras rolling because the event was being live-streamed for donors who couldn't attend. I felt humiliated, exposed, like someone had ripped my clothes off in public. Kenya grabbed my arm, whispered that we should leave, that I didn't need to sit through this, but I couldn't move. I watched Damon and Chantel walk off that stage together, hand in hand, like they were the victims in some great love story. They sat down at the executive table, and I could hear Chantel saying, "I'm so glad it's finally out. We can finally be free." And that's when something inside me shifted. See, I'd been so focused on the betrayal, on the humiliation, that I'd almost forgotten something important. 3 months earlier, I'd been looking for a charger in Damon's office at home when I saw his laptop was open. He'd left up a spreadsheet, something about the nonprofit's finances. I didn't think much of it at the time, but something made me take pictures of the screen. Just a feeling. And later that week, I'd found some credit card statements in his drawer that didn't make sense. Charges for luxury hotels, expensive restaurants, designer stores, all labeled as business expenses. I'd taken pictures of those too, telling myself I was being paranoid, that there was probably an explanation. But sitting there in that ballroom, watching my husband play the victim with his mistress, I realized those numbers hadn't added up. And if I was right about what I thought I'd seen, Damon wasn't just a cheater, he was a thief. He'd been using nonprofit funds, donor money meant to help kids in the community, to finance his affair. That's fraud, that's embezzlement, that's prison time. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened my photo gallery. I scrolled through the screenshots I'd taken, bank transfers, credit card statements, expense reports. And there it was. Clear as day. $45,000 in nonprofit funds spent on personal expenses over the past year. A vacation to Cancun, charged to the organization's account, designer bags from Gucci and Louis Vuitton, monthly rent payments to an apartment complex across town. And the biggest one? A car payment for a BMW, registration in Chantel's name, all paid for with money that was supposed to be helping youth programs. Kenya was still whispering that we should go, that I didn't need to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. But I wasn't breaking anymore. I was calculating. I stood up, and my hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt this calm wash over me, this clarity. I walked toward the stage and people started noticing. The MC was trying to move the program along, but I didn't care. I walked right up to that stage and took the microphone out of his hand. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady. "I think I deserve a chance to respond." The room went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Damon's face went pale. Chantel looked confused, and I just smiled. First, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight to support this wonderful organization, and I want to acknowledge my husband for his honesty. It takes courage to stand up here and tell the truth. I paused, let that sink in. So, since we're being honest tonight, let me share some truth too. I started soft, classy. Talked about how I'd worked 2 jobs to put Damon through grad school while taking care of our 2 kids. how I'd invested my savings into his dream of starting this nonprofit, how I'd supported every late night, every weekend event, every moment of his career while building my own practice as a physical therapist. People were nodding, some looking uncomfortable. Damon was staring at me like he couldn't believe what was happening. Then I pivoted. "But let's talk about where your generous donations have actually been going," I said. The room shifted. I pulled out my phone and asked if we could project it on the screen. The AV guy looked confused but did it anyway. And suddenly, there on the big screen behind me were bank statements, credit card charges, expense reports. Over the past year, $45,000 in nonprofit funds have been spent on some very interesting expenses. I walked through them, one by one. The luxury vacation to Cancun, charged to the organization. $5,000 at Gucci, labeled as program supplies. Monthly payments to an apartment across town, $1,300 each, marked as office space rental, except the nonprofit already had office space. And the big one, a BMW, $28,000, registered to Chantel Morrison, paid for with money donated by people in this very room to help underprivileged kids. The crowd erupted. Board members were standing up, faces red, demanding answers. Donors were yelling. Damon was shaking his head, trying to say something, but his mic wasn't on. Chantel looked like she might throw up. I don't think she'd known where the money was coming from. She'd just been enjoying the lifestyle, not asking questions. And honestly, that almost made it worse. "So yes, Damon," I said, looking directly at him, "you can have your divorce, absolutely. But you're going to give me everything. The house, full custody of Trevor and Aaliyah, alimony and child support. Because I'm not just a wife you can humiliate and discard. I'm also the woman who's about to make sure you face consequences for what you've done." Then I told them what I'd already done, that I'd contacted the nonprofit's board of directors 3 days ago with copies of everything I'd found, that I'd filed a report with the IRS, that I'd retained the best divorce attorney in the city, that I'd reached out to the local news stations, and they'd be very interested in this story. I'd been planning my exit for weeks, once I'd confirmed what he'd been doing. I just wanted to see if he'd do the right thing first, if he'd come to me privately and end our marriage with dignity. He didn't. So, here we were. I handed the microphone back to the MC and walked off that stage. Security was already moving toward Damon. Board members were surrounding him, demanding his immediate resignation. Chantel was crying, saying she didn't know, that he'd told her it was his own money. And I just kept walking, Kenya right behind me, both of us heading for the exit. Behind me, I could hear chaos. Yelling, accusations, the sound of my husband's perfect image crumbling in real time. And you know what? I didn't feel bad. Not even a little bit. In the car, Kenya was grinning like she'd just witnessed the greatest moment of her life. "Girl," she said, "that was the most gangster thing I've ever seen." And I just started laughing, not a sad laugh or a bitter one, but a real, genuine laugh. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt free. I felt powerful. I felt like myself again. The aftermath was intense. The video of my speech went viral within hours. 50,000 views that night, then hundreds of thousands by the next morning. The local news picked it up, then the state news, then national outlets started calling. Damon was charged with embezzlement and fraud. His lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd planned to pay it back, but the evidence was too clear. He took a plea deal, got 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and had to pay full restitution to the nonprofit plus damages. The organization barely survived, had to bring in a whole new board and director to rebuild trust with the community. Chantel left him the moment she realized he was broke and facing legal trouble. Turns out her love wasn't quite strong enough to weather consequences. She moved to another state, tried to rebrand herself on social media, but the internet doesn't forget. Damon lost everything: his reputation, his career, his freedom. He lives in a studio apartment now, working a regular 9 to 5, paying off his debts. He gets supervised visitation with Trevor and Aaliyah twice a month, and honestly, the kids are better off. They don't need to see him pretending to be something he's not anymore. As for me, I got the house, full custody, generous alimony, and child support. I took some time to heal, to process everything, to rebuild. Then I did something I never expected. I wrote a book about my experience, about financial abuse in marriages, about the red flags I'd ignored, about how to protect yourself. It became a bestseller. I started getting invited to speak at women's conferences, on podcasts, at churches. Women would come up to me crying, saying I'd given them the courage to leave their own toxic situations. Eventually, I started my own nonprofit, one that actually helps women leave abusive marriages, providing them with resources, legal support, financial planning, and counseling. We've helped over 200 women so far, and that number keeps growing. My kids are thriving. Trevor's in a gifted program at school. Aaliyah's excelling in dance. They're happy, healthy, and they know their mama doesn't play. They watched me stand up for myself, and I hope that taught them something valuable about dignity and self-worth. I'm not gonna lie and say it was easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, days I questioned everything, moments I felt like maybe I'd overreacted or been too harsh. But then I'd remember that stage, that moment when Damon thought so little of me that he believed he could discard me publicly, and I'd just take it. I'd remember the donor money he stole, the trust he betrayed, the years I gave him, and I'd realize I did exactly what I needed to do. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd cry and run out of that ballroom with my tail between my legs. But I didn't build my husband's entire career, didn't sacrifice years of my life and thousands of dollars just to let him discard me like I was nothing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just moving on silently. Sometimes it's making sure the truth comes out, making sure there are consequences, making sure the world knows exactly who they're dealing with. If this story gave you chills, if it made you want to stand up and cheer, smash that like button and subscribe for more real talk. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have exposed him on that stage? Or would you have just walked away quietly? And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who's being underestimated or taken for granted, share this video. Let's remind the world that we're not the ones to play with. We're not the ones who'll just sit quietly while someone destroys us. We're the ones who'll take that mic and tell our truth, no matter who's watching.